There is no legal definition of hate speech in the United States, and freedom of speech is a fundamental human right.
So what?
So the only world in which hate speech would be defined, correct me if I'm wrong, you're drawing a hypothetical, you've ignored the reality of where we are now. Let me finish my phrase.
Hate speech exists without a law.
Let me
You run up and call someone a nigger, that's hate speech.
First
dude.
off, I wouldn't
You
use
know
that
what
language,
you're
you could be
referring
fined for
to.
hate speech. Welcome back to another installment of Change My Mind. For those unfamiliar, this is a segment where I go on the street, we take one given topic, and I just listen to people. Let them change my mind, we rationalize our positions, and it's usually really productive. We attempt to have a civil dialogue. Sometimes people end up changing their own minds. And we'll show someone in just a few seconds here. But I do want to show you something first. It's important to note that there are some people out there who have no interest in a rational discussion. They will be angry and volatile no matter what, like this guy. Would you like to have a discussion, or would you like to interrupt and be contentious? I'm trying to listen.
Would you like to be arrogant and not hear people say, you're making me uncomfortable, you're hurting me, you're causing dysfunction in the world, and say, oh, are you going to have an intellectual discussion? Because, like, I don't understand or
No, I understand
honor other
exactly.
people's
You said
experience.
there's
You
no
really
definition
don't,
of a
dude.
human right.
You really don't. People who understand and empathize with other people, when they say, hey, man, you're really making me uncomfortable and you're making my life worse.
Yeah, legally that's irrelevant.
They practice on hearing you. They don't make references to the law, man.
But that's
They
what
say,
matters.
No, it's not. Like, what do you...
Yeah, it is.
Dude, I'm literally autistic.
So?
Okay? I can understand other people's feelings better than you, apparently.
Really? How would you know that?
Imagine if I run up and I'm a real big jerk to you.
Kind of like you are right
Yeah.
now. Now, even with that having occurred, this lady who could not disagree with me more ended up having an entirely different experience.
Why do you have
Question?
a suit on?
Well,
Is it symbolizing white male privilege?
no, I hadn't even thought of it that way. Is that what you thought when you look at it?
Huh? I wondered.
Is it because I'm a white male?
And you're dressed in white?
Well, it's just to fit the sign.
Okay.
It doesn't really mesh well with the peach skin tone, as it were. Do you have a problem with white male privilege?
Yes, I do.
No. How so?
White males have destroyed this country.
Oh, really?
Yes, they have.
I disagree. Would you like to change my mind? Or have a discussion?
Can you imagine if women had been in charge for all these years, how much different things could have been? I'm not saying they could have been better.
Sure. Steven, by the way.
Oh, Terry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean it. You hurt your wrist there? Or?
No, it's
Oh,
carpal
okay.
tunnel.
Oh, you know, I have that too.
It's broken. Oh, you do?
Yeah, I wanted to learn piano too, and it's just
Really?
gotta be chopsticks.
Oh.
Yeah.
You don't have it fixed?
You know, I've looked at the surgery in it, but I have to do another knee surgery now, so it's like, I gotta decide what I want working at the time.
Yeah. You might want to fix your knee so you can walk, and then you can walk to the other surgery to have your wrist done.
You know what's helped is I've gone to an iPad for my laptop, and so as opposed to constant mouse work, doing this seems to have helped quite a bit. But I'm interested in what you said. Okay, so imagine how different the world would be, or the country, if women ran it.
Yeah. If women had been the ones in charge,
Okay.
you know, and men had been the ones fighting for suffrage all those years, you know?
But men were the ones fighting for suffrage.
Not for themselves.
Sure, for women. Are you aware that it was over 60% of women didn't want the right to vote? It was actually closer to, it was like 70-something%. You know why?
Those mostly majority would have been wealthy women, right?
No, a big reason why, actually, we were just talking about this with Naomi Wolf, is because the right to vote was always a privilege. It wasn't just a basic right. And so for men, it included the draft, mandatory bucket duty, meaning firefighting services. And when it was proposed, it was, okay, women, the right to vote comes with these responsibilities. They didn't want it. So a majority of women didn't want those responsibilities, so they didn't want the right to
We
vote.
want to vote, but we don't want to wear the pants.
That was back then, yeah. I mean,
Right. We still want men to treat us like delicate china.
yes.
Right.
A little, well, back then, historically, you know, so women
Yeah.
did get the right to vote, but they weren't a part of the draft. They didn't have to perform in the firefighting service.
Right.
I'm not saying,
It's
by the
like-
way, that women shouldn't have the right to vote. I'm just saying
right.
it's looking through
But-
today's lens of history.
Right. It's
back
all
then.
or nothing. It's like, all right, ladies, you want this? Well, this goes with it. I mean,
Right.
we can also tell you that you can be drafted just as easily as we can.
Is that something you'd support, women in the draft?
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that, what this is? Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. Oh, sorry. Well, you know,
No.
yes, I was just. Hate speech is not a thing. It doesn't exist, and anyone can change my mind. Do you disagree?
Like racism and stuff.
What about like racism and stuff? You can all come in and discuss. By the way,
Hate speech?
What is hate speech?
Oh, thanks.
Okay. What's the legally?
Negative.
But hate speech, right? What's the legal? What is hate speech? What's the legally defined term? What does it mean?
I don't know, you tell me.
It doesn't exist.
I don't know if it doesn't have a legally defined term.
It does in my country of Canada or in Europe, where you can be jailed for saying offensive things, but in the States, the First Amendment protects against that. So the question.
Canada?
I was raised in Canada. Yeah, I live here now. Thank God.
Why do you want to go
God.
to America?
Why? We all want to go.
Yeah,
Really?
I want to go to Canada.
Well, why don't you go to Canada? I just came here. I wanted to come and I came. Why don't you go to Canada then?
Because I would love to.
Why?
Free healthcare.
Really? Free healthcare?
I'd have to sell my condo. I'd have to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You'd have to. What is free about healthcare in Canada? What do you pay in taxes here in the States?
Well, well, my paycheck is really small, so.
So you didn't pay.
Less than 20%.
Okay. So right now you're fundamentally not paying taxes. So what if I were to say, that your taxes are over half your marginal income tax rate? You're paying 14% sales tax, and you still have to pay for 70% of the drugs and services you want in Canada, and the wait times are bad. As a matter of fact, there are fewer.
To be a doctor in Canada are bad. I heard.
They're really bad.
Longer than-
Yeah. So if you want to move there for just free health care, also, by the way, they're not super friendly to immigrants with the health care. Doesn't include you guys right off the bat. Yeah. They're actually much stricter on immigration than the United States.
And that includes Americans.
It includes people coming in that haven't paid enough time into the pool,
So are
right?
Canadians really
Which is
against
understandable.
immigration?
No, they're not. It's just, when you're talking about a socialized healthcare safety net, a lot of people don't understand sort of the asterisk that comes with it.
Right, pay your dues, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just interesting to hear a lot of people say they want to move to Canada. So you would be okay with like Canadian law where you can be jailed for quote unquote hate speech or fined? Yeah.
What is hate speech in Canada like then?
Well, they just passed a bill where you can actually, depending on how you read it legally, you can be fined or you can be jailed for misusing gender pronouns for someone who's transgender.
Really?
Mm-hmm. You can be punished for that
By
legally.
accident? What if you?
I mean, at that point, right, legally it's illegal or it's not. So then it
Right.
becomes, is it by accident or is it on
Right.
purpose? Either way, is it something that should be a punishable offense?
No.
Okay. So we've said that's not hate speech.
So in other words, they're trying to break down the First Amendment rights in Canada.
Well, they don't have a First Amendment. No other country has a First Amendment
that's right.
outside the United
Yeah.
States. Yeah, free speech doesn't exist outside the United States. A lot of people don't know that. So are we willing to trade that if speech is offensive? I say no, but I'm willing to hear any arguments that change my mind.
Thank you.
Yeah? That's all. Even if we disagree on, let's say, everything, I think it's important to listen to what an opposing point of view has to say.
In other words, you're trying to define hate speech as just in the same category as all speech. It's
Yes.
First Amendment.
Yes.
So, and it's your right. It doesn't make it ethical, of course. It doesn't make
Of course. You could say something very offensive, for example, very racist, that I would disagree with
Right.
horribly, but it's speech. You have the right to say it, and I have the right to be offended if I want.
Right.
I have the right to disagree with it.
Yep.
I have the right to argue why you're wrong, but I don't believe that we have the right to shut down anyone's speech based on a term like hate. But I'm open to hearing convincing arguments on hate speech.
this point. Not to mention when you say something like that you didn't mean, and once it comes out of your mouth, you can't take it back.
Yeah, I know.
And you may not have meant it, or it just accidentally slipped out, or
Right.
the wrong person heard it. The microphone was on.
Get a couple wild turkeys in you, all of a sudden you're
Yeah.
talking about making America great again. You never know what comes out. Yeah, I've seen it.
But you're not pro-Trump.
That's an interesting question. I'm actually more of a libertarian. I am definitely a conservative, having moved to the States, leaving a socialist country. I'm not a huge fan of Trump individually.
Conservatives?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm pro-free speech. I'm pro-Second Amendment. I'm pro-limited government. I don't really know what Trump is on any of those policies. But for example, looking at his recent tax proposal, I would support that. I would support coming from a family of legal immigrants. I would support ensuring our borders, making sure that we're secure, while of course allowing people to immigrate here legally. So certain policy, I've definitely lined up more with him than say like Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, but I don't particularly like him.
right. Because there's a few facts about Trump that are bothersome to me.
Yeah.
The fact that I expect that because many presidents before him, especially even Michelle Obama, had a PhD. Barack had a PhD. That's the highest position in the country. Wouldn't you think we would expect at least the person to be that well educated? You have a PhD. He's got a bachelor's that his dad probably paid for.
Right.
Okay? We pretty much know that. I mean, come on. Not to mention, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask you a question. Who would you say, or just you don't have to pick any one specifically, but list, who would you say were the best presidents like throughout history? From George Washington up until today. Who are your personal favorite?
Well, my personal favorite is Abe Lincoln.
Okay. Did he have a PhD?
I do not know.
Is it possible that Abraham Lincoln read in a shack by candlelight? With very little formal education?
You tell me, did he?
Yep.
Yep. I'm figuring that's the case if you're saying that.
My only contention there is that a PhD doesn't make anyone smart or unintelligent. I've met people with PhDs who are moronic. I've met people who never graduated high school who are brilliant.
Yeah.
It's not to say you're wrong if your presupposition is that President Trump is unintelligent. I'm not arguing that, but I don't think that a PhD is a fair determining parameter. And based, it seems, on your own preferences, we'd probably agree on that.
Yeah, unless you look at the fact that educational opportunities were not as easy for people, for past presidents, as they might have been for Trump, especially since Trump has enough money, to have gone that far. And that has stifled his maturity, I believe. I mean, he's sorry, but he's a toddler. I mean, he is. He's immature.
I think he's emotionally immature. I would agree on that.
I am a therapist.
Okay.
So, clinically speaking, he is mentally ill and not stable. Doesn't belong in the White House.
Yeah, but we can't necessarily forbid him from the White House if people voted for him, right? Just based on that.
Yeah, but I don't acknowledge him as my president.
You don't?
No, I don't.
Why's that?
No, because he's not representing what I feel is valuable.
Okay.
My values.
Okay.
But
he is the president legally.
And like, I feel like every stupid opportunity that he has, like going to Puerto Rico, throwing paper towels, it's like PR stunts.
Yeah.
You know. And his rhetoric, he's doesn't. I mean, what did I hear the other day? He said he was looking to speak to the president of the Virgin Islands or something like that.
Yeah.
He's just that bad that he doesn't understand. His horizons aren't open enough.
So it'd be safe to say that you're probably more left. You're liberal.
I am.
Okay. But I guess on this, it sounds like we agree. You support
Al Franken for president.
Al Franken for president? Okay. Sounds like we agree, though, on the idea of the First Amendment and no limitations on freedom of speech.
And then they walk. We have to, because when we start putting those limitations, we're going to be like we're going to be needing Amnesty International stepping in and save our asses.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you're pretty.
You said something that You're
pretty right-leaning on that, libertarian on that. Does it bother you at all that your party, who you support, the DNC, people like Al Franken, there's a lot of proposed legislation on speech, that they support hate speech laws? Does that concern you?
They support those
hate speech laws.
Constrictions on the First Amendment.
And also, of course, culturally, I'm sure you're aware, liberals obviously are far less tolerant of speech they disagree with. But on the legal side, would you be, for example, opposed to any legislation that would impede on someone's speech?
I would oppose to it.
Okay. Would you vote for?
That was leftist leaning. It is, even though.
Yeah.
So that's ironic because.
Hillary, Bernie, Warren, Graham.
My degree's not politics; it's in
sure.
psychology. But
I'm actually very interested to hear your opinion on that, because you would know more about the pathology behind that, and seems like you agree with. Seems like we find common ground, even though I'm an evil right-wing, privileged white male from Canada, and you're more liberal.
Well, if you're from Canada, you can't be all that bad. Well, it's interesting that that's something they get behind, because if they're if the liberal left-wing view has always been, free thinking, and free to be who you are, and gay rights and all this stuff, and
right,
immigration and pro-immigration, why wouldn't we still welcome that freedom to express ourselves?
Right.
You know, because I'm an artist too.
Sure.
And you never want to think that it would start to spread in that regard too.
Right.
That we could be stifled by our ability to express ourselves in that particular manner.
Okay.
And have it be what's the word I'm looking for?
Tyrannical.
Yeah.
That could be
but
tyrannical.
have it be defined or
Right.
looked at, or
Sure.
you know.
So let me ask you this.
I see a message in this. It's hate. So take it off the wall, and
Right.
you're arrested for.
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
I
let
didn't
me-
mean it that way. Well,
Right, exactly. Well, let me ask you this kind of final question, because I know you have to go on your merry way here today. Let me ask you this: would you now do, maybe after this conversation, a little more research into candidates you support regarding their positions on freedom of speech?
Yeah,
And-
because I didn't know Al Franken was opposed.
well,
I
let's
know
say
he
whoever
was-
it is, whether it's
yeah.
Bernie or Hillary Clinton, would you look into it more? And let's say it were a candidate who supported some form of hate speech laws or constrictions in the First Amendment. Would you consider not voting for them, even though they were a Democrat?
Yeah, I definitely would.
See, that was nice. Not everyone's this guy.
Imagine we change the First Amendment
Yeah,
and then we pass a law saying that X behavior is hate speech.
right.
Is it now hate speech?
That would be a violation of human rights, and I wouldn't support it. Thank God there's no law like that exists.
That's wonderful. Imagine that we did it.
But here's the thing:
Imagine that we did it.
Can I just answered your question.
I'm here.
Imagine
to
that we
talk
did
to
it.
people and
Imagine
tell
that we
them
did
that
it.
Hate speech isn't a thing because there's no legal definition of it.
Right.
I'm saying, imagine if there was a legal definition
Yes.
of it.
Yeah. I would
Would
be
it then be hate speech?
No, it would be a violation of human rights, and I
That's
wouldn't
wonderful.
support
I
it.
agree, it's a violation of human rights.
Okay. So
Would
you
it
don't
now
support
be
hate speech laws.
I do.
Okay.
I'm hearing you say that whether or not something is hate speech hinges on whether or not it's legally defined.
No. What I'm saying is, yes.
And
First,
I don't want to hear you tell me that there is not a legal
there is no
definition of
legal
hate speech.
definition of hate speech in the United
That's
States,
irrelevant,
and
then.
freedom of speech
So
is a
what?
fundamental human right.
So what?
So the only world in which hate speech would be defined, correct me if I'm wrong, you're drawing a hypothetical, you've ignored the reality of where we are now.
Hate
Let me finish
speech
my
exists
phrase.
without a law.
Let me-
You run up and call someone a nigger, that's hate speech.
First
dude.
off, I wouldn't
You
use
know
that
what
language.
you're
You could be
referring
fined for
to.
hate speech.
Hey, did you enjoy this video? Here's the thing, you're here, this is the end of it, so we don't care because you already watched it. But if you really didn't like it and you want to justify it, leave a comment below telling us why you didn't like the video. And if you liked us, let us know. And subscribe to the channel, because that lets the overlords at YouTube know that, you know what? You're all right.